the whole 6010.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico and see all the ways that you could save. It is Thursday, September 29th. And we have football tonight, gentlemen.
Yeah.
It is Daniel, Field, and Mike joining you today.
Let's go.
Getting you ready for everything that you need to know for Thursday Night Football. For wide receiver, cornerback matchups, we've got a Squirrel Stock. Our buddy Adam Schefter is going to stop by.
I know him. I follow him on Twitter. Do you follow him?
And I do follow him on
okay.
Twitter. Yes. Field, do you follow Adam on Twitter?
Nope, I refuse to.
Yeah. It seems like one of those things.
I mean, when was the last time he put out a useful tweet?
Right.
I don't know. I get all my news from Field Yates.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, I don't follow you because Adam just retweets all of your tweets.
Just retweets
so
that
that's where I
stuff?
get
Yeah.
your info.
Oh, okay.
I
Got
don't
it.
want to add to your account. I don't want you to get a big head, so I follow him.
Bigger head, to be clear.
Yes.
Bigger.
Bigger.
Yes.
Bigger. Did I not say that?
You said
that
big
was
head.
assumed. That part was assumed.
I realized Rosie asked me a question this last week. Someone, a friend of ours, got a quarter zip in the mail today or yesterday from a company, and she was like, "What's a quarter zip?" And I was like, "It's the kind that just starts here,
Right.
that
Only
goes up."
zips one quarter of the way down. Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, so like if you have a big head, it's like a really good shirt for being able to get your big head into it." And I was like, I don't think that's why they got it, but yeah, I
Right.
guess it does make sense.
Wow. Okay. I had not thought of that either.
And then I started thinking about, I've seen Peyton wear a lot of quarter zips, and it makes sense to get that big old head in there.
Oh, Peyton catching strays here. Okay.
I don't think it was a stray.
I think it was.
It was a direct shot, I think. I'm pretty sure. All right, let's talk about
Fair
let's
enough.
talk about some football.
By the way, you're fired.
That's right. Please no.
You will not be appearing on Peyton and Eli.
Is Peyton going to come take over my spot?
to
on
say,
Fantasy
wow,
Focus?
now here we go. We had our opportunity. I don't want to spoil the the big reveal, but we were supposed to be the three of us, a guest of Peyton and Eli on Monday Night Football on Monday night.
Sorry, guys.
That has been canceled. I'm being told in my ear it has been canceled. Way to go, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel.
Ruined it for everyone. All right, let's talk about Thursday Night Football. We've got some lineup blocks that we're going to go through. Mike, your playbook, which is an awesome article, goes through, talks about lineup blocks, everybody that you can lock into your lineup in week 4. We've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, both from the Miami Dolphins, inside the top 10 at wide receiver. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Mixon inside the top 10 at running back, Chase wide receiver 3, T. Higgins wide receiver 15. I think the real conversation here, those are all the skill position guys. You're starting everybody in this game.
Oh, yeah.
And in theory, it should be really fun. We've said that quite a few times so far this year, and there's been a lot of low-scoring games. But in theory, this should be a really fun game, and I think the conversation starts with the quarterbacks because you have Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa, and there's been a lot of ups and downs. I know it's only been 3 weeks into the season, but you can't just go out there and feel super comfortable or confident throwing either of those guys in your fantasy lineup in week 4 with the way the first couple of weeks have started. So with that being said, I have them both inside my top 10. I'm trusting them here this week. Mike, do you like Tua Tagovailoa and Joe Herbert, both as top 10 quarterbacks here in week 4?
Joe Herbert. I like
Joe Herbert.
Did I say Joe Herbert?
That's him.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
So Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert together,
that would be
combine
scary.
their skill sets.
That would be
we
scary.
would cancel the rest of the season.
Yes, we
because
would.
it would be
over.
over.
Yeah,
Yes.
they would never lose for sure. This one's interesting. So I do have Tua at 7. There are things that make me a little uncomfortable. Not to mention he's questionable. Does expect to play in this game.
Yep,
I mean,
call.
he's had one good fantasy quarter, right?
Yeah, one.
He has. He was QB2 that week. Lamar actually had more points when he had that huge game. His other 2 finishes have been 20th or worse, right? So he's had that one really good game. He's been terrific from an efficiency standpoint, mostly due to that one quarter. But the Bengals have played really good pass defense. They've allowed 5.9 yards per pass attempt. That is 3rd lowest. Also, Tua, we've talked about this the past couple of weeks, not doing much with his legs so far.
0.
Actually, less than last year. He has 1 yard on 4 carries so far. So a couple things that are giving me some reservation, but I still have him QB7. And the reason is I was like, that seems high, right? Especially with the bad matchup. And I'm looking at the guys I have behind him, and I'm just like,
This is the problem.
there's nothing there. It's just like I don't feel great about anybody right now.
right.
So he
lot of tough
ends
matchups
up as
this
a
week.
QB1.
I was going to say, so one of the themes, a couple thoughts here. First of all, did you say Tua's not doing much with his legs this year and he has 4 carries for 1 yard?
Yes.
Not doing much. That is a very nice, that's a very diplomatic way of describing it.
polite.
He has
Well, you said 0, and he technically is 0.1 points. So
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
saying.
Gotcha.
Unless
Yeah,
he
you
fumbles. As he fumbles.
As far as
off
accuracy is concerned, you are more accurate than I am because he has, 0.0333 points per game as a runner so far this season. But not only have there been inconsistent quarterbacks, but I would argue this might be one of the trickiest weeks to navigate from a matchup standpoint. Look at some of the guys that you would normally consider either close to lineup locks or players that have played well enough so far this year that might be inclined to use them, right? Even like a Trevor Lawrence. He plays Philly this week. Matthew Stafford, he's been kind of fringy, right? Who's he play this week?
49ers.
He plays the 49ers.
Yeah.
They're really good on defense. Guys like Russell Wilson, we thought coming into the season, were no doubt about it plays, right? Tom Brady. I'm
Aaron
actually
Rodgers,
fairly
yeah.
confident on Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers, another one right there. Like, there are enough quarterbacks that have question marks. I'm a little lower. I've got Tua at number 9, only because, like, the one quarter thing does scare me. But what I'll also concede, I know that Dolphins fans are very, very particular about this, is that they had like 39 offensive snaps last week. Like, the fact that he had 176 passing yards last week actually wasn't terrible given the amount of snaps that they played. So I've got him still inside my top 10. I'm actually more optimistic on Joe Burrow, who I have as quarterback 6 this week. But it's a weird week to navigate right now.
Yeah.
No, Lamar Jackson's sweet.
Agree.
Besides that, even Patrick Mahomes is going to have a tough matchup on Sunday.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, even Justin Herbert had a rough one last week against Jacksonville. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like the state of fantasy right now is kind of rough. You know, scoring is down across the league, and the whole game has kind of been affected, right? So hopefully we get a little bit more offense going forward. But defenses are just playing more conservative. They're in more cover too. And
Wow, Mike just not showing any respect to the defenses.
Yeah, seriously.
that's what I am doing. I'm saying they're playing differently. They're playing well.
Okay, you want more offense going forward.
Oh, I want more offense. Yes, I do. I mean, we need more man one and open up some big plays downfield. That's what we need.
I'll tell you, we got plenty of offense
The wide receivers?
in Detroit. All right, let's talk more
What's
about
the
this
record?
game, though,
How's
specifically.
that
You
going
know
for them?
what, Mike Clay? I don't need it from you. Field, I do want to ask you this.
Yeah.
These running backs, hopefully I don't have to choose in starting a Dolphins running back.
Yeah.
Last week, we did see Raheem Mostert get a little bit more work, more snaps than Chase Edmonds. But if you had to choose one going into week 4, is there a Dolphins running back that you would, quote unquote, trust more?
Not really trust either of them, to be honest. But I have Chase Edmonds ahead of Raheem Mostert, even though Mostert has had the snap edge in weeks 2 and week 3. Mike McDaniel kind of forecasted he wanted to see more out of Raheem Mostert after a quiet week 1. This comes down to the passing game utilization, though, and one of them is fairly useful in the passing game, Chase Edmonds.
Yep.
One of them is basically a non-factor. That's Raheem Mostert. And while I think that Mostert's a better finisher at the goal line, I'm not fully convinced that he is a guarantee to get goal line work. I think that if Chase Edmonds is on the field when they get down to the goal line, he may just stay in the game. It's not like they're going to automatically sub him out. So I give the edge to Chase Edmonds here. I prefer not to play either one of them, but there are so few good running backs, and I get it if you see someone with Chase Edmonds in your lineup tonight.
Yeah, Edmonds has 11 carries and 2 targets over the past 2 weeks total, not an average. And Raheem Mostert's under 10 touches a game, has not scored a touchdown yet this season. And the Bengals, I mentioned, good against the pass, really good against their run as well. 4th fewest fantasy points over expected to running back. So tough matchup. Committee, they're not getting enough volume. Avoid if you can.
Only thing I will say about the Bengals run defense is they are going to be without DJ Reader for some period of time. Not just one of the best players on their team, one of the best defensive linemen in football. A massive, massive loss against the run. Still, I think this defense is pretty gritty and tough.
How about BJ Hill? You know, you just really
What a
quick, like
great
you talk
story.
about
Yeah.
what a good pickup by them last year. Just a low key guy they got from, I believe it was a 1-for-1 trade with the.
I think it was
with the
Billy
Giants.
Price. How about this?
Billy Price.
Billy
That's it.
Price went to the Giants. BJ Hill and a 7th round pick went to Cincinnati.
Yeah. And they got a home run. He's been terrific. So
3
just
years,
another
$30 million
small
bucks,
piece
yeah.
of that Bengals Super Bowl run last season. And he'll still be there, obviously.
All right, Mike, before we move on from this game, real quickly, I want to mention Jamar Chase might see a shadow from Xavier Howard tonight. True.
Yes, this is true. Howard has been busy this season. He shadowed Devontae Parker, did great. Shadowed Rashad Bateman and did okay, other than the 75-yard touchdown he got caught napping on. And then Stephon Diggs last week at 7 for 74 on 11 targets, which is fine.
Yeah,
you know, it's not like
solid.
a super high ceiling Diggs game, which is what we kind of talked about going into the week, right? You're still starting him. He'll probably be fine, not have a huge game. That's what we got. So Howard's good, but at the end of the day, it's Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
You don't bench Jamar Chase. His target share is up this year, which is something else we predicted this year.
Yep.
That has come true. That's all good. And that offense, it has to be better, right? It has to be better. There's too much talent there. I think they'll get pointed in the right direction at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this week because Miami's defense has been really good. Kind of a bend don't break against the Bills last year, which is why the Bills ran so many plays because they're so good and they were moving the ball downfield, but a lot of short passes. But Miami's defense is kind of making that leap, and it makes sense because they had all that pedigree. Those guys are starting to get to their 2nd, 3rd, 4th years in the league, and they've really stepped it up this year.
So sometimes I like to mention stats that probably don't matter, so I can use that caveat because if they don't play out tonight, no one will hold it against me. But if they do, if it does play out, people are like, oh yeah, Field mentioned that. Joe Burrow's been really good on Thursday Night Football. So just keep an eye out on that one tonight. I'm just saying, like, you know,
Okay.
if he plays well tonight, you can thank me later. Not Joe himself or like the offensive game plan or the wide receivers. You can thank me primarily. But just keep that in mind. He's played well on Thursday.
Play on
night.
Thursday Night Football.
And if
I
he
like it.
stinks tonight, it's Joe's fault.
It's Joe. Yeah, that's all
He
right.
won't care that I said that. Work tight.
All right, let's move forward and talk. Mike Clay's wide receiver. Let's pick this game. That was close. Thanks, Phil James. Let's pick
see.
this game. Miami Dolphins, the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike, what do you have? I want to start with you because you always set the line for us, I feel like.
Yeah, so my projection shows Bengals 24, Dolphins 24. So it's really tight.
So
So I had to
between
make
a
a
tie?
decision. I do. It happens all the time. It basically means it's a
really
push,
good
right?
close game, yeah.
So, but I'm gonna. Offense has been down this year, so I'm going to knock a point off the Dolphins. I think the Bengals pull it off, 24-23.
Daniel?
Wow.
Which is, by the way, right on the. It's 47 points to the over under. I just realized, so I'm right on that line, but
That's
a little edge to the
amazing.
Bengals.
I am going to take. We're in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Bengals.
All right,
They
take the
have to win
Dolphins
this. They're
then.
1 and
I take
2.
the Dolphins then, but it is a must-win game. You know what? All right, I'm picking the Dolphins. I'm holding steady on that one. Tight game, but the Dolphins win. Not only did the Bengals play well on Thursday night, the Bengals are wearing their white stripe helmets. That's
yeah.
right. That is immense. Like, that might be a material difference in the value of both Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. So,
know.
again, you can thank me later if
So that's
Jamar
the point
Chase.
I took off. Like,
That's
was
what
for
it is.
it was a jersey.
Yeah, but the problem is the Dolphins might have
Analytics.
the Dolphins have some sweet unis as well.
Yeah.
So great matchup, strictly based off of uniforms.
Really
and
excited
also,
about
this
Dolphins,
is like a potential AFC championship
Yeah.
matchup too. I mean,
Well, that
Miami's
or like
good,
it could
but-
be a like a loser leaves town match for the Bengals, right? Like 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
yeah.
Gonna be in
Yeah,
trouble.
but if there's a team that's going to turn it around, I mean, they're playing good D. The O should be better. Anyway, big game for them at 1 and 2 for sure.
Yeah.
All right, wide receiver cornerback Mike
Okay.
is out this week. We are talking week
So good.
4. And Devontae Adams leads off
Yeah.
my sheet, which means that I want to know how many points is Devontae Adams going to score this week. It's been, I don't want to say tough sledding, but this week I'm
saved
looking
by touchdowns.
for positive news. So what's the positive news you have for us on Devontae Adams
The
this week, Mike?
positive news is, he's good at
Devontae
football,
Adams.
I guess.
He's
That's
Devontae
exactly
Adams.
right. You're still starting him. That's the positive
That's the
news.
positive
right?
news, okay.
I do have him at 17 points in the projection here, 6 catches, 10 targets, 80 yards. But look, we downgraded him a little bit, right? He's down at wide receiver 10. It's been a rough couple of weeks for him, and he draws a really tough shadow matchup here. Patrick Surtain. Denver has been really good against pass so far. Second
they
fewest fantasy points allowed to receivers, 6th fewest to the perimeter, which is where Adams is most of the time. I'll get into that more in a second. But Surtain so far, second year, was a first-round pick last year. A guy that's breaking out at the cornerback position. There's a lot of hype for him even in the preseason and during training camp. He shadowed DK Metcalf in week 1. He shadowed Brandon Ayuk in parts of week 3. It makes perfect sense that he would chase Devontae Adams this week. Now, Adams will be in the slot about a third of the time. That should help him out. Surtain's not going to go to the slot. We talk about that a lot. Shadow corners don't always move inside. That'll be the case here as well. So Adams will get a little relief. Maybe he can get a few catches, maybe a touchdown. He has scored a touchdown in all 3 games, but to your point, 16 targets, 44 yards.
Yeah.
Over the past 2 weeks. It's
not what
just
you wanted.
unheard of for
Not things I
Devontae
was
Adams.
expecting. I haven't checked. Did anybody see whether Hunter Renfrow practiced yesterday?
I
Anybody
believe
have-
he did not.
Okay,
with
so
the
but
concussion.
also something to keep in mind there, just because Hunter Renfrow, obviously the top slot target, maybe, and I think Mike could probably track this better than I would. Did the Raiders utilize Devontae more in the slot last week?
Not positive.
Wow,
if
as usual, Mike says
I'm
if the
not
show
prepared.
unprepared.
You know what
What's
they
up with
utilized?
that?
They utilized Matt Collins. That's what they did.
Yeah, baby.
Wow.
That's sweet hair. I'll just say this, like separate and apart from everything Mike just said right there, which was all great and very useful. Like, we got to get it going here, Raiders. 0-3, only team in the NFL that has not won or tied a game so far this season. Can get late early in Las Vegas.
yeah.
If they don't take care of business on Sunday against the Broncos, this division that we thought was going to be a 4-team race could be down to a 3 or even a 2-team race, depending how things shake out come Sunday.
If it's going to get any worse, I could just throw around negative Derek Carr stuff. It's not like he's going to hear or
Stop
see
it.
it.
Stop
Just-
it.
I mean, at that point,
dare
I'm
you.
blocked anyway. So
I have a quick question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but you said you have him projected for 6 catches for 80 yards, 17.2 fantasy points, but 6 catches for 80 yards is 14 points.
Because he also bakes in like partial
So
touchdowns.
You could score touchdowns. There's actually this thing in fantasy football.
Stop it.
If you
I knew it. See,
catch the ball in the end zone, you get 6 points added
Oh,
to your
yeah.
total.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
So sometimes you got to figure
so
out.
let's add 6 +8, that's 14, +6, 6, that's 20. But how do you have them projected at 17.2?
So if you project someone for
I was
one
trying to be
full
nice about it.
touchdown,
You're coming at me now.
so one full touchdown projected would assume that you're scoring 16 or 17 now for the full season. That's too high.
That's too much.
You have to use like percentages. So he's probably projected at about 0.5 touchdowns, which would be 3 points.
Which is, yeah.
Plus
okay.
14 is 17. See how that works?
I love you.
I still don't get it, but
I
yes.
love you, Mike. All right, let's talk about
I'm just taking out my anger of all the feedback I get on Twitter with the exact same question.
here.
People
Yeah.
see our projections and they're like, this doesn't add up all the time. I'm like, oh my goodness.
You're like, please. All right. Thank you for explaining that. Let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, and Deebo Samuel.
They play the Rams. It's got to be a tough one, right?
Yeah, Jalen
You know what?
Ramsey.
Yeah, I almost hesitated on this one. I'm like, the Rams just show up at times. You know,
They
they're
do,
so
yeah,
good.
totally.
But the deeper you look at this, the less concerned you are, honestly. So the Rams, first of all, have a ton of injuries, right? Jalen Ramsey's playing A-plus ball as usual. He's terrific. He's healthy. Everyone else is not. Troy Hill is on IR. He's their number 2.
Right.
David Long, Durant, the rookie. They were both out last week. We'll see if they play this week. They're working their way down the depth chart, and it's showing up in the numbers. They've allowed the second most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Now, you might think, well, Ramsey will be on Deebo Samuel. Not really. You know, Ramsey usually doesn't shadow full time, so it's not going to be anywhere close to 100% of the time. It'll be here or there.
Yeah.
Like Deebo will be outside. You'll see Ramsey work his way over sometimes. Not enough to be worried about it. And Deebo has crushed the Rams over his last 6 meetings with this team. His average, 9.7 touches, 103.8 yards, and a full touchdown. He averages a touchdown per game.
Not a half of a touchdown, a full touchdown.
A full touchdown. That's 6 points. That's not 3 points.
That's 6 points
for that. And last year, with obviously the most recent 3 matchups, including a playoff game, 10 touches, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 12 touches, 140 yards, and a touchdown. 11 touches, and 98 yards, and a touchdown. He was terrific.
Gosh.
Brandon Ayuk was over 200 yards across those 3 games. Juwan Jennings, George Kittle both had 2 touchdowns in the 3 games. They had no trouble last year. They crushed it against this Rams defense. So I'm not worried. Same quarterback still there, Jimmy Garoppolo. Same personnel for the most part. The Rams are probably more beat up than they were last year. They actually had Von Miller for a couple of those games. So feeling good here. People might be intimidated by that, especially like from a DFS standpoint.
Yeah.
No way. It's been the opposite.
I just see the Rams and I immediately think Jalen Ramsey. So I think downgrade. Like that's just what my fan brain thinks.
That has not been the case recently.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's awesome. All right. One more matchup, and this one is tough. We've talked about it a little bit earlier. Justin Jefferson had a tuple of cuff.
That's my new fantasy team name. Couple of cuff weeks.
Couple of tough weeks. The last 2 weeks, this week's unfortunately gets Marshawn Lattimore. Mike, expecting one more down matchup probably before we see Justin Jefferson get unlocked.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Jefferson so far had the huge game against the Packers, right? Over 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. You think, here we go. He is the Cooper Kupp of this offense. He's going to have a huge season. Draws the Darius Slay shadow, 6 for 48. Draws the Jeff Okudah shadow. We'll talk about more about him shortly. 3 for 14, right? So it's been a rough go here when he's been shadowed by the opposing number 1 corner. We're going to see that here with Marshawn Lattimore, who is known for just stepping up in these big spots, and he is going to be on Jefferson quite a bit. I will say this, the last time these 2 teams met was week 16 of 2020. Lattimore did shadow Jefferson in all but 6 of his 41 routes. Jefferson had 6 for 85 in that game. No touchdowns, only 55 yards against Lattimore. Got away from his coverage a little, had a 30-yard catch. It's going to be tough. And again, it's the same thing. Like, you never, ever bench Jefferson. There's no scenario where you do that.
Yes.
But you might not have the 30-point day that is the ceiling. He's probably going to have a more of a limited ceiling. DFS cash games, maybe you avoid Justin Jefferson this week. But again, you're starting.
Just thinking back to something. Wonder if we got greedy this offseason when we were like, yeah, maybe Justin Jefferson can take on the Cooper Kupp role.
That wasn't us. Justin Jefferson said that.
Okay, well, maybe we all. I'm saying we, like the collective we, not necessarily the 3 of us here specifically. It's like, yeah, we can get the Justin Jefferson in the Cooper Kupp role. Like, the dude has more receiving yards through 2 seasons than any other player in NFL history. Like, I would take 85% of what we've got in the past 2 years and live happy for the rest of my life.
It feels like this is not a fair comparison, But it feels like when you talk about the Antonio Gibson, talked about how he's going to be CMC light.
That's what I was thinking when I said that.
The difference is like Justin Jefferson is better than Antonio Gibson. It's not a fair comparison because he's good enough as it is. But once you put that Cooper Kupp expectation on a player, everything that player does is going to feel like they're not living up to an expectation that's unfair.
Maybe Antonio Gibson was just looking into the future when Christian McCaffrey no longer caught passes.
Hey.
And he was like, hey, I want to be the CMC light of 2022. Yeah.
Yeah, CMC is Derrick Henry now. And
Right,
Henry was
yes.
CMC last week when they had,
yes.
3 for 40 and through the air, like, to start the game.
Jonathan Taylor, it's an upside down world.
It is. It is. It's like all the reports we heard in the offseason were like just like positive reports. They're negative. Like all the negative reports, those players are it's just like you can't. It's just
It's
chaos.
crazy.
It's
Tom
a chaotic
Brady is a
first month.
question mark in fantasy. Like
I know.
just when in doubt, it's like, okay, this is a weird week.
Yeah.
Weird month, weird season.
I mean, Cooper Kupp had a down week last week. Like if that happens,
Yeah, he
then-
only had like 16 fantasy points last
What do you
week,
have?
right?
Didn't he have like 4 for 44? I thought he had a.
But he had a 20.
he had a-
rushing touchdown.
Oh, he had the rushing touchdown.
Yeah,
For
right,
20
right.
yards. I know it's amazing
Which
that
is
I'm still
crazy.
undefeated in all my leagues. I don't know how that's possible.
Stop it. Stop it. All right, we're going to come back, talk with Adam Schefter, take some social questions. But first, Field, help us out.
Okay, if I can find my sheet, I will do exactly that, Daniel. I am going to find it right here. Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV, even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use Geico mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
The NFL action is in full swing here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. That's not enough. Everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays right now. For every leg that you add, you can boost your winnings up to 100%, with payouts even bigger than ever. Why bet on football anywhere else? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code FFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. It's code FFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call or text Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Bonus issued as free bets. One early win token issued to opt-in. Money line bets only. Deposit and wagering restrictions apply. Eligibility and terms at DraftKings.com/football terms.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Pretty good right there. Pretty good. Pretty good. I think we have Schefter. I can hear his voice already, which
I'm
might
not
be
sure. Do we have Adam Schefter? Or are we
I
going to take
heard.
some social
We're
questions?
taking some social questions while we work to get Schefter set up.
All right. So let's throw to our good friend Kyle. You know what? And I did this by accident. I meant to introduce Kyle Soppe. He's hanging out in our YouTube chat every single show at the top of the show. Kyle, I'm so sorry I forgot to say hello to you off the top, buddy.
It's okay. We said hi when you got here. I felt introduced. We're doing okay.
What do we have so far from our YouTube chat?
Jacob has a trade on the table. He wants to know if you guys would take it. Devontae Adams for Dalvin Cook, full point PPR.
So you would be receiving Devontae Adams. Ooh, that's a tricky one right there. I would go with a yes, and here are the two reasons why. One, Dalvin Cook has been hurt or is hurt right now and is uncertain to play in week 4. As of this conversation, we'll have Shefty about that in a minute. And second of all, I think Devontae Adams turned things around in a major way. Mike gave us some pause for week 4, but I think better days are ahead. How about you?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I would be wondering about roster construction, though, too. This is a tough one, but
It's way
that
too
aside,
pragmatic of an answer.
Yeah, if it's just like a flex spot, I think I would probably lean toward Adams right now.
If you're making a 1-for-1 trade for leaving Dalvin Cook from your roster, I'm just assuming you have another running back that you're going to step in.
I guess
there.
so, or 2 or 3.
Something,
You
yeah.
have what? I don't know. This
I
guy
do
must
love
be.
that.
But that's a good trade right there. That's a good,
That's fine,
solid,
yeah.
reasonable trade. I don't think that you're clearly winning. I also don't think that
You're not clearly losing.
I
No.
think, so often when and sometimes I get caught up in the dynasty wash too much, but it's tough to make these trades. Someone's like, yeah, so I would love your Patrick Mahomes, and I'll give you my 2027 third round pick. And you're like,
Sold.
And you're like, Jeremy, quit texting me.
that's an
right.
inside joke that's
All
just
right.
not very nice.
It's not. I'm sorry. I love you, Jeremy. All right, Kyle, let's do another one. We got another question here.
Another 1-for-1 deal with an NFC North running back. Cordell wants to know A.J. Brown, Aaron Jones, the rest of the way. Who scores more points?
Ooh.
Aaron Jones or
A.J. Brown.
I want A.J. Brown.
I want
there.
A.J. Brown
Yeah.
too. Just because you're going to have, it seems like it's possible you're going to have to deal with every single week of Aaron Jones. We'll call him AJ.
They're both
friends.
AJ.
Yes. Aaron Jones, he could be the leading back on his own roster, or he might not be in a given week. And A.J. Brown should be the alpha almost every week.
And the Eagles have indeed switched to a pass-first offense, which is what one of our concerns in the offseason.
You love to see it.
Something we were hoping for, and they have done that. So absolutely. We've AJ, and AJ, because AJ Dillon, of course, is kind of stealing half the carries from Aaron Jones, and he's somewhat busy in the passing game, but no doubt about it. I'm leaning AJ Brown. I feel better about him on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, especially with that Eagles offense. With the way that Eagles offense continues to roll, there's no way.
Although they play the juggernaut Jacksonville defense this week, so we'll see.
We'll find out. We'll find
Doesn't
out.
this is just like a tangent here, but doesn't it feel like right now that the explosion games for wide receivers are A, more frequent, and B, way more potent than breakout running back games right now?
Yep.
Right? Like we've had a couple, Aaron Jones had a monster week 2 where he had the, 2 touchdowns, 30 points. But like, it feels like the number of explosive wide receiver games is way outpacing the number of explosive running back games. So I know that we talk all offseason about how hard it is to find running backs. You should value them the most in fantasy. But right now, like A.J. Brown seems like a way better bet week in and week out to score 20 points than Aaron Jones. Way better bet.
He almost scored 20 points his last week, even while his teammate Devonta Smith scored like 35. Right?
Yeah.
Like he still got plenty of volume from that standpoint. So it's
doubt.
tough not to trust AJ Brown. All right, Kyle, what else we got, buddy?
Carrie wants to know why Jalen Hurts is only projected for 19 points. She says he's going for a 30-piece, no doubt.
Whoa.
I think that's directed
Why do
right
you
at
hit
you.
me? Because I'm an Eagles fan? Is that why?
And because you do the projections.
I do.
Why is it only 19 points?
Uh,
Because that's how many points he's going to score.
Exactly. That's why. I mean, is there like, I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
I put the number there that he's going to score.
I got to say this. I feel bad. And it's not that it's a bad question, because it's a question about someone just wanting to understand the process.
Oh, anytime we can take a shot at Mike, it's a good question.
Go for it.
But this
Let's
is not
go.
taking a shot at you. But your projections, you do conservatively for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say, it feels kind of tough when a guy has scored seemingly 30 points a game over the last 3 weeks to say, yes, this sort of unbelievable volume is definitely going to continue.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you project that.
Exactly. You have to, it's almost like when people, and I've used this before, but they're like, okay, so Patrick Mahomes, only his second year, he had this like MVP season. Why would you expect his numbers to go down? He's just going to get better, right? Or Joe Burrow last year. Okay, he had like the highest completion rate and yards per attempt in the NFL, right? And now their offensive line's better. Why are his numbers going down? They're going to go up. Like guys, even Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, they don't play at their peak season every single year, right? They don't have this off the charts 50 touchdown, 5,000 yard season every year. There's a reason they come back to earth a little bit. Sometimes they have a down year, things go wrong, they go up, then they end up in the middle. That's it. I mean, Jalen Hurts is off the charts. He's been terrific so far. It should be a tougher matchup. They've had some light ones so far. They had Detroit, they had Washington,
dare you.
and now they're playing Jacksonville, who, I mean, maybe it was a fluke, but probably not. Like they have some talent there, and they've been really good so far. We have to consider that. So coming back to earth a little bit of regression to the mean, a little bit of a tougher matchup. That's all it is.
I'll tell you what, Jalen Hurts is a must start for all three of us. That's the only thing that really matters in this conversation.
I mean, I have him like projected second at quarterback, and I'm like defending it.
Also,
like,
people like,
I don't hate him. Like,
wouldn't you much rather Mike underestimates the projections rather than have Jalen Hurts projected for like 32.4 this week, and then unlikely, but he has like an 8.5 points in the game? You're like, well, Mike Clay said I was going to win, and he only missed his projection by 24 points. What does that guy know? Tell him to go back to Kutztown.
And by the way, our projections are a little too high across the board.
Are they?
They are. They're a little too high. And I am conservative.
Are you referring
and
to
people think they're too low?
You're referring to Cole Kmet, huh?
That's
Yeah.
what
Oh,
it
yeah,
is.
that's
That's
it.
what it was.
Where do you get the
But
chef?
this is in general. Like I'm projecting a little more offense too. Just in general, especially pass catchers, probably a little high, maybe like 5-10% higher than they should be.
You know what?
That's a long story. I can get into another time. But people complain that they're too low and too conservative. They're really not. Like if you just bet my lines against Vegas lines all the time, you're going to take too many overs and you're going to lose money, right? You lean toward the unders.
I have a tie. I have a thought that ties this. Do we have Schefter yet? Because if we have Schefter, I want to wait and make sure that
I don't think
Schefter
so.
hears
We're
this.
gonna
I think
take
we
one
have
more
Schefter.
question.
No, we haven't.
Oh,
We have
we do.
Schefter.
All right.
And I want to, Schefter, if you can hear me, first of all, good morning. It's great to have you as always.
Good
And
morning, Field. You got me?
I got you indeed.
Oh,
and
Schefter, you wearing a quarter zip there, buddy?
we were talking about quarter zips
I don't know what I'm
earlier.
wearing here, man, but whatever I'm wearing, I'm wearing.
Shefty looks sharp as always, but Shefty, Mike was just talking about how his projections have actually been low, and sometimes the feedback from fans is, his projections have been high, and sometimes fans will provide feedback that is like, how is Jalen Hurts only projected for 19.4 fantasy points? You're way undershooting it, and I can be. Like, no one is has a better pulse on the fact that sometimes his projections are actually too high, because I believe I've made history, Shefty, and I want you to be a part of this conversation as well. As through 3 weeks, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but you know what? We're all family here. Through 3 weeks in the War Room League, my tight end position has managed to produce 0.0 points. Are you aware of this, Shefty? Did you know this actually happened?
No.
How about
Who's your tight end?
Well, it's been quite the adventure. Week 1, Cole Kmet. You think to yourself, excuse me, good solid stretch last year.
I got Darnell Mooney, so you don't have to say any more, okay?
So, 0 points from Cole Kmet, but we say to ourselves going into week 2, it was a monsoon. There's no way that'll sustain, right?
Right.
Sunday Night Football, he'll show out on primetime. Week 2, bagel. All right, Cole Kmet, you're going to the bench. How about Jawan Johnson? Saints tight end, who's been really good, has production in weeks 1 and 2. Excuse me one more time. Is playing out a ton of snaps. All those things are good. How do they do in week 3? Not so good. 0.0 points. Let me grab a glass of water here for a second here, Shefty, before I cough up along. Thank you. Tell me about your lineup.
So here's the question: while you gather yourself, you're gonna get all choked up about not getting a single point out of the tight end position. Who are you starting in week 4 so I know not to play him in DFS?
I don't know. I might just ceremonially start Taysom Hill or something.
Pick
I don't
a long
know.
shot.
Yeah.
Your long shot.
I don't know who I'm going to start. I'm still working through that one, Shefty. Here's what I can tell you. Don't play that player in DFS. I'll give you an answer.
Is Taysom Hill available in the War Room League
He
right
is
now?
not. He is not. I believe we have Jawan Johnson and Jonnu Smith now on the roster. It's a 16-team league, so you are like scraping the bottom of the barrel here. We'll see. If I get one catch from my tight end, I will throw a party in the War Room on Sunday.
By the way, what's
contagious.
going on? It must be contagious from you. Okay,
Sorry,
so
Shefty.
thank you for that. But I'll tell you this: I feel the same way about tight ends that you do, except I used my second-round draft pick on Kyle Pitts. Okay,
Kyle Pitts.
So now he did come to life last week, but the first 2 weeks, I think he had like 5 total points in 2 weeks.
3.9 and then 3.9 in back-to-back weeks. Just
okay,
remarkable.
there you go.
Remarkable.
Yeah. So he had 7.8 in 2 weeks. So it felt like 5, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So it was just awful. So we've both been struggling from the tight end position. I showed signs of life last week, or Kyle Pitts showed some signs of life. Hopefully he can continue that this upcoming weekend. We'll see. But tight end's been a tough spot. That's why I went Pitts high, thinking that would give you an advantage over the people like yourself that don't have tight end help. But it's been a tough spot to fill.
And Shefty, during the preseason, we had a conversation about whether there was merit of using a first-round pick on Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews. A lot of people clap back, say, no way you should be doing that. I think 3 weeks into the season, it feels like it might have been the best strategy going.
Here's the thing that worried me on Mark Andrews, and I don't know why it did, but it did.
Yeah.
I thought that Isaiah Likely was so impressive in the preseason that they would use both tight ends. And so, Mark Andrews' 95 catches or whatever it would be 75. Like, he still have a big year, but that Likely would take a little bite out of it.
Yeah.
But that really hasn't happened so far.
So far, so good for Mark Andrews. He's been amazing. Let's get into some injuries, Shefty, and we could probably do the entire conversation on just the NFC North.
Every week, yep.
Yeah, we really could. But this week specifically, that division is just so banged up. 3 running backs, DeAndre Swift, plus David Montgomery, plus Dalvin Cook, all got hurt last week. Do you have any updates on the 3 of them and your forecast as to whether they'll be available come Sunday?
Well, of course, in one league, I traded Khalil Herbert last week, and I'm facing him this week. That was just brilliant on my part.
Bad beat.
Really happy about that.
Man.
Really happy about it. But I do have Khalil Herbert in the War Room League, and I do have DeAndre Swift in the War Room League. So Khalil Herbert's coming to the rescue. So I feel very invested in the NFC North running backs. And we start with Dalvin Cook, who didn't practice. He's had this shoulder issue. Chris Mortensen talked about it on Sunday. Interestingly enough, before this all unfolded, that he's had a shoulder issue that he has declined to get surgery on repeatedly. And it's been a problem. The Vikings have wanted him to correct the issue, and he's resisted the surgery. And there it is again, popping back up. I think that's the third time on that shoulder. So it's been a recurring issue. My guess is he'll be out there in a limited fashion at best. Do I think we're getting a full Dalvin Cook this weekend in London against the Saints? No. And I won't be surprised if he doesn't play at all anyway. And he's going to be limited in terms of raising that shoulder, what he can do. So I think Madison's going to have some work this week. Maybe he'll get all the work. David Montgomery was not a significant injury, didn't practice yesterday. If he doesn't practice today, it's going to tell you all you need to know about that. Trending in the direction of Khalil Herbert, who I'll be facing in one league and starting in another. And DeAndre Swift, I thought Dan Campbell tipped his hand on Monday when basically he said, we got to shut this guy down for a couple of weeks, then have the bye, and then they play the Dallas Cowboys, I believe, on October 23rd. So I don't expect to see DeAndre Swift, who I have in both leagues, of course, for the next 2 games, and then the bye week. So we'll see DeAndre Swift again October 23rd would be my guess.
Okay, so by the way, if Alexander Madison starts, it's great. If Dalvin Cook plays, but plays in a limited fashion, it's what we call fantasy football purgatory because you just don't know what to do, right? He's Dalvin Cook. If he gets 8 carries, he might turn it into 55 yards and a touchdown, but he also might get 8 carries for 13 yards, and you regret playing him entirely. In that same London game, all of a sudden the Saints are very banged up, Schefter. What's going on with both Jameis Winston, Michael Thomas, and I suppose even Jarvis Landry?
Well, Jameis Winston, let's go to last week. On Wednesday, I was told that Jameis wasn't going to be able to start last week, that he had back, ankle, leg, shoulder. Like, he had a whole host of things beyond his back. So I really thought last week that Andy Dalton was going to start. And then lo and behold, Jameis Winston rises up later in the week, goes through practice Friday, starts. They don't play well. They don't win the game. And now they go off to London. So Jameis doesn't practice again on Wednesday, which, again, it didn't raise my antenna at all. I thought, okay, this is what happened last week. But then, today, he doesn't practice again.
Yeah.
Now, that, to me, is a sign that we may be tracking towards the Saints giving him a break that he needs and going to Andy Dalton, who, by the way, has looked pretty good in practice, from what I understand, in New Orleans with the Saints. And so I won't be surprised if we get an Andy Dalton game on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. The other receivers, Michael Thomas, still not back at practice today. Toe injury. So that's problematic. The fact that it's 2 straight days of no practice. Landry back at practice today tells me we'll see Jarvis Landry on Sunday.
Man, yeah, it's which would be good for the Saints, obviously, if they have Andy Dalton. Chris Olave has been so good for the Saints, though, so far this season. He was a breakout player in Week 3, and if Michael Thomas is unavailable, hard to imagine not starting Chris Olave against the Vikings.
Chris Olave, 13 targets in each of the last 2 weeks. No touchdowns yet, though, Field. No touchdowns
Could
yet.
that be changing this weekend is the question.
It's time to get Chris Olave on the board there.
Yeah, it will be great to see. As far as bigger injuries go for the NFL, Schefty, neither one of these is going to impact fantasy, I don't think. Well, this one, not as much. But let's start with Mac Jones, who suffered a high ankle sprain this past Sunday for the Patriots. Seems iffy at best to play on Sunday. What's the latest you have on Mac Jones' outlook?
Dr. Belichick himself yesterday proclaimed it day by day.
12 times.
So 12 times, day by day. Yeah. It was one of his great sound bites in the annals with On to Cincinnati and all these other bites that he's had over the years. But again, I don't think we're going to see Mac Jones this week. I think Brian Hoyer is going to wind up starting against the Green Bay Packers. And the way it was described to me earlier in the week is this is the kind of injury. He's got torn ligaments in his ankle, Mac Jones does. Okay, so it's the kind of injury that most people would have surgery, and he still may, at some point in time, have surgery on it. The question is, when is he going to have surgery? When would he do that? Would he try to wait till after the season? Is he going to wait to have it, try to recover on it? So we don't know the answer to that, but what we can say short term is it's going to be an issue. I don't think he's going to play this week. I do think we'll see Brian Hoyer. And this is something that Mac Jones, to me, it's a multi-week injury, even though Dr. Belichick said he is getting better, and we'll know more day by day.
Day by day. And by the way, as you mentioned, Brian Hoyer likely to start for the Patriots if no Mac Jones. As we discussed in the show yesterday, Brian Hoyer's real first name is Axel, which we think actually means he'll play better than expected. That's a great first name right there, Axel. We think he should go by Axel full time.
Axel Hoyer, why would you get away from Axel?
I don't know.
Why would you do that?
It makes no. He explained it yesterday a little bit. I saw the quote that I think basically that's his father's name, and it sounds like his dad wanted to continue the legacy of Axel. his mother was not as inclined to have a child named Axel, so she agreed that Axel would be the first name, but the child would go by Brian. So that was their meeting in the middle resolution for Axel. I think it's Axel Edward Brian Hoyer. So
correct.
it's a heck of a name right there. Last one here.
It's almost as complete as Equinemius St. Brown, his full name, which he described to my daughter Dylan on Slime Time this week. If you get to see that clip, that was kind of interesting too.
Oh, I got to check that out, by the way. Dylan Schefter, the real star of the family on
Not really,
television.
but okay.
No, Schefter. Come on. You know she is. She's awesome. She does a great job on
We love
Slime
her.
Time. We love
Very
watching
much.
Dylan. She is a
Yes.
prodigious star on TV, in my estimation. And one more injury update here, Schefty. Dak Prescott, who has not played for the past 2 weeks, but it seems like he's getting close. Do you suspect he could be back, as he is now forecasting in week 5?
Fields saw him on the field Monday night.
Yeah.
Spoke to him as he was warming up. He had just gotten the stitches out, and he said, in his words, it went smooth.
Okay.
He did say, basically, he told Lisa Salters as well that he was not ruling out this week. Now, I don't think anybody's expecting that Dak Prescott is going to play this week, but the fact that that's even coming up and is in the conversation tells you that Dr. Jerry Jones is going to be more on track here than a lot of people who thought initially, like Jerry Jones himself, that Dak could miss a more significant period of time. Like when he went down with that injury at first, a lot of people thought, myself included, we may not see him until after the Cowboys bye, 8, 9, 10 weeks down the road. But whether he plays this week, next week, or even the week after, it doesn't really matter. Well, it matters, but his absence is not going to be as long as people initially thought. And Cooper Rush has kept the team afloat and played very well.
Yeah.
And so Dallas is in a position where it's not going to go away. It's got a great defense. And so it will be for Dak all about whether and how effectively he can grip the football. And once he can grip the football and he feels comfortable with that, whenever that is, he'll be back. My guess is we'll see him maybe next week at the Rams. Maybe. We'll see.
And as you mentioned, Cooper Rush has played really, really well. Bought the Cowboys some time, as they are now 2-1, just one game back of the Eagles in the NFC East, excuse me. Shefty, any last-minute war room or other league decisions you have to make this week that you're agonizing over?
Well, I did lose Swift. That was brutal. So I have to kind of just stick in a running back, which I'm not really thrilled about right now. We'll see. I do have in the War Room League, I have Tevin Coleman sitting on reserve, and he's somebody that should be on people's radars. I'll say that right now.
People are probably like, wait, he's in the league? He plays for the 49ers in the practice squad right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. He should be on the radar of people that are desperate for a running back like I am this week in a 16-team league where you'd lose your number one back.
Duly noted.
Yeah, so that's somebody that should just be on radars. We'll see what happens with that. And I also want to thank my team last week after I wrote them off. They didn't like that field.
Yeah,
they did not
they
like
responded
being
well,
written
though.
off on this show last week because they went for 161 points last week. They showed me I was wrong. They rose up to the challenge. They showed they had some character, and we'll see that. And I also want to thank you, which even though I didn't play, for cutting Romeo Dobbs. Claimed him. He'll be in Per Source's lineup this week.
Okay, Romeo Dobbs on the radar and in the lineup for Per Sources. By the way, you snagged Khalil Herbert last week. You had him in your lineup in the War Room League. You played him before David Montgomery got hurt. That was I don't know. I mean, I know you guys sources everywhere, and I know that you often know stuff well before it happens. But to know before that game that Khalil Herbert would go for 30 fantasy points,
Feels like a long shot.
unbelievable. That's Shefty magic at its very finest right there. Shefty, you are the best.
That's a little bit of Shefty luck there too. Yeah. Right there.
I think it's more magic than luck. More magic than luck. Shefty, thank you very much. And we'll talk to you again here next week. And, of course, Sunday on Fantasy Football Now.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Great stuff from Shefty, as always, Daniel, which I think leads us right into
Hold on.
our...
Can I ask you a question?
Sure,
Yes.
please do.
You cut Romeo Dobbs in a 16-team, or I need details on this?
Yeah, this is like after week one or week 2.
Oh, so a while ago. Okay,
Yeah, no,
all
this
right.
was not after.
I was like, after last week?
No, this was a while ago.
Yeah,
thought
he
he
went
just
off
cleaned
8
Dobbs
for
off
80
waivers.
touchdowns, and then he cut
Yeah, I
him.
was like, I just cut him.
I'm like, this isn't a 6-team league. Like, what am I missing here? Okay,
this was
that makes
it
more
was
sense.
Really, I was after a really. Unfortunately, we have Dak Prescott. At the time, we had Najee Harris, who was banged up, very iffy to play. So we were in a major roster crunch, and so I had to make a choice. So it was either him or it was like, it was the week that Jacoby Myers was also out. So all of a sudden, you're like, you have no Jacoby
Last
Myers,
week?
no Dak Prescott, uncertain have Najee Harris.
Yep.
Like you have to
Gotta
cut
do
somebody.
something.
So yeah, unfortunately.
All right, we got a couple of games.
Yeah.
We are going to run through really quickly before we got Squirrel Stock to close this thing out. We're going to start with the Seahawks at the Lions. Reminder to check out CSS DFS. Going to be in your feed a little bit later this afternoon. Lineup blocks for this game. Mike Clay include Jamal Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and TJ Hawkinson. Looks like all three of those are just Detroit Lions. Obviously, DeAndre Swift going to be out. We already heard Adam talk about that.
And we'll see on St. Brown, by the way.
And we will see on Amon-Ra St. Brown to be able to figure out. Yep. So we'll have to keep monitoring on that. When I look at the Seattle Seahawks, I kind of think that not only both of these pass catchers, but maybe these running backs, with how porous this Lions defense has been, should maybe be in consideration. So let's start with the running backs, Mike, because Rashad Penny, still the guy, right? Not ready to turn it over to Ken Walker yet. But I'm not sure I'm ready to start Rashad Penny with how bad things have been the last couple of weeks, even in spite of this bad defense.
Right, and that's exactly right. I mean, that's the reason why you might consider him for a flex, right? Because they've allowed the most touchdowns and fantasy points to running backs the Lions have so far.
Yep.
So you think about that, and maybe in a deeper league, you're considering him for a flex. But here's the thing. I have him 35th. Field has him 36. You're at 31.
Yeah.
He has no top 30s yet this season, right? The production has not been there. He has 32 carries. It's about 10 per game. 4 targets. That's crushing. He has not scored a touchdown. His efficiency has regressed to the mean, which is something we expected to happen when in this lead back role. Just not happening. It's a 3-man backfield. Actually, Travis Homer's on IR, but DJ Dallas just stepped right into that passing down role last week. And of course, Ken Walker's role is only going to increase. So no, I don't feel good about anybody in this backfield right now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it is worth noting, by the way, just on the Lions, like if we don't have Amon-Ra St. Brown, is there a player that we can pivot to here? Is there a Josh Reynolds sighting? Is it DJ Chark, who I would think it's more Josh Reynolds than the DJ Chark, just because stylistically he's a much more similar player to Amon-Ra, more of a slot guy. Chark is like just a vertical target, and Jared Goff's strength is not throwing the ball down the field right now.
Yep.
But keep an eye on Josh Reynolds in case Amon-Ra's unavailable come Sunday.
I think both would be on the flex radar in 12-team leagues, but I don't know if look, the depth at receiver right now is really good.
Yeah.
And you probably don't need to go with Chark or Reynolds. If I had to pick one, though, I would pick Chark. I think he's a better player. Like if I had to pick one of those two, I'd pick
I
Chark.
think he's a better player too, but he's barely gotten the ball this year.
Yeah, since week 1.
He's going to be the best. This is best board bet all game.
And they're all right.
You want to do
doing it?
DJ Chark versus Josh Reynolds for week 4?
If Amon-Ra's out, this is a weak board bet.
All right, fine. Let's move on.
I don't really think it's
all right,
we can
guys.
if you want to.
Hey, no, if you guys don't like fun, it's not a problem. All right, let's talk about these Seattle wide receivers. Field, DK Metcalf. Again, in theory, both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett seemingly would have good matchups here. I actually have Tyler Lockett ranked ahead of DK because of that matchup. Oh, Mike does as well. What is it that you look at when you see these two wide receivers here in week 4?
Yeah, I mean, they're both super talented. So I think that's the problem, is that like these guys are unbelievable players, still very much in the prime of their career. So that's why at some point you have to consider them on your board. I'm more optimistic on DK only because I thought we saw some signs of life last week that I am trying to hope. I'm trying to manifest. I keep using that term. So,
but we need it this year because no one is manifesting. So
it's a problem.
We need to try to manifest everything.
Maybe it's a little bit rich on DK, but I know that Jeff Okuda's been better. I know DK made some comments about how Jeff Okuda's been getting tons of safety help, and all of a sudden Tracy Walker III not available for the Lions for the rest of the year because of an Achilles issue. Mike talked about the wide receiver cornerback matchups earlier on in the show. So I'm more optimistic on DK Metcalf than I was a week ago. But I understand there's still some major risk involved because of the quarterback play.
Is Kirby Joseph going to fill in for Tracy Walker from that standpoint? Third-round rookie?
I presumably, but look, here's the thing. If they're going to keep giving Okuda safety help, they're still going to give him safety help.
Yeah,
it's still going to be the same situation, and it has been effective. Really quick on this, Okuda, week 1, did not shadow. He was targeted 6 times, allowed 21 yards. So he actually wasn't shadowing in that game. I'm not sure. He had a ton of help. Week 2, part-time, he shadowed McLaurin. He had 6 targets, 30 yards. Week 3, he shadowed Justin Jefferson. That's maybe the highlight of his career so far. 3 catches, 14 yards on 6 targets. So
awesome start.
He's been great. He's playing. It was a top 5 pick a couple years ago. He said what was it? He tore his Achilles in week 1 last year.
So stoked for the dude.
Right. It looks like a year 3 breakout for him. He's going to be on number 1s. It's definitely a tough match. And by the way, Tyler Lockett, what we needed from him this year was, okay, you don't have Russell Wilson. You're not going to get them like hero ball, long touchdowns all the time anymore that he lived on. He was very boom bust, but it always totaled really good seasons. His average depth of target's down from 14.8 to 10.4. His catch rate's up. It's a lot of short area stuff. And he has 9 catches and 76 plus yards in back-to-back games. Yeah. So it's working. I have him ahead of Metcalf, and as long as Geno keeps throwing him in the short and intermediate range, he's going to be fine.
Yeah. Tyler Lockett turning into what Tyreek Hill kind of became last year in that Chiefs offense if they had to take it back. All right. Last player for the Lions. Would you stream Jared Goff this week? We've seen the Lions' explosive offense. Is there any of these kind of star quarterbacks that you would take him over top of Field?
I mean, based off my rankings, I have him higher than Aaron Rodgers. As an example of somebody. You know, Rodgers, who played a little bit better last week, but still only had 2 passing touchdowns, and Romeo Dobbs showed some signs of life, but still some major injury question marks in that wide receiver group for the Packers, some offensive line question marks, even though both Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari played last week. Bakhtiari was a part-time player. Patriots defense may not be dominant, but they're certainly solid. I know Lamar Jackson did some Lamar Jackson things last week, but a solid enough defense to make me a bit nervous. I have Jared Goff one spot ahead of Aaron Rodgers this week.
Yeah. I would stream Goff as well. I have him 10th on my board. He only has 15 rushing yards so far in 6 carries. We know his ceiling will be limited by that. But yeah, 7 passing touchdowns so far. He's 5th in that category. Seattle has allowed 8.8 yards per pass attempt. That is worse in the NFL. So, you know, we're talking about some of your other options. I'd go with him over Tom Brady. Tom Brady doesn't have a top 15 finish so far this season. I do think better days are ahead, though. He's a name to watch here with potentially Chris Godwin back. He's limited at practice. Mike Evans is back. Julio Jones is expected back. Things are trending the right direction.
It starts this week for Brady.
Yeah, I think so. I tend to agree.
All right, I'm with you on that. Let's move ahead and talk about Cardinals and Panthers lineup locks for this game include Kyler Murray, James Conner, Hollywood Brown, and Zach Ertz. All the way across for the Cardinals. For the Panthers, you got basically just CMC right now.
And by the way, Christian McCaffrey missed practice on Wednesday. It's a thigh injury.
Oh, great.
Last week, Matt Rule was very clear, like he was going to play after he missed a practice or was limited in a practice due to an ankle injury. Yesterday, he was not as committal. He was non-committal, so to speak. So we'll see. I am hopeful that Christian McCaffrey will play, and my early instinct is that he will play, but let's monitor that one, of course, on Sunday.
I think the only names that really matter here that people are considering, you probably streamed Greg Dortch maybe up until this point. Oh, like double-digit fantasy points in each of the first 3 weeks. We don't have him ranked here, but if you need him in a deeper league.
Well, part of the reason why is that he's been filling in the Rondale Moore role, and Rondale Moore returned to practice yesterday. So it seems like there's a chance, even if it's an outside chance, that Rondale Moore could be available soon.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, too, because A.J. Green is going to miss this game. He's basically doubtful right now. Still no DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't think Greg Dortch is going to play behind Andy Isabella at this point, right? So they do have specific positions, though. Yeah. So who knows? But I think they'll probably try to find a way to have Rondale, Dortch, and Hollywood Brown on the field together and kind of move them around. That's my expectation.
It's a great story.
So, yeah, definitely. So Dortch has a shot here. I don't have him ranked, or I have him ranked really low at this point, but we'll just kind of keep an eye on things as they lead up to game time.
I've started to change my mind on the Dorcher Chamber 2 Field. I just want you to know that. Like, it sat with me for about a week.
You don't like it, or you do like it?
I didn't like it at first, and now I'm coming around to it. I want you to know.
You didn't get it. You didn't get it.
I didn't get it at first.
You were in the shower, and you were like,
Dorcher Chamber.
That's hilarious.
I get it now.
Okay.
Only other player in this game to maybe even consider, and it's crazy we're having this conversation, DJ Moore.
That's not crazy. Yeah, you have to. I mean,
outside the top 30 for all 3 of us this week, Field.
Well, I think Mike actually has him inside the top 30. Is that correct, Mike?
I have him 28.
Yeah, so I'm at 36 here.
All
I'm
of the
less
smart
optimistic
rankers
on DJ Moore. Yeah, I said this a couple days ago, but this gets down to one of those where, like, he has to earn his way back into your lineup before you utilize DJ Moore. He's had 88 receiving yards the entire season. That's less than Laviska Shenault, who has 2 catches the entire year for Carolina. DJ Moore had 2 yards last week. It's not a DJ Moore problem. He still owns a reasonable target share. It's this offense is passing the ball ineffectively and infrequently. They just are a disaster offense right now, other than Christian McCaffrey as a power runner. Who would have thought that? So I would like to, if I have an option, I would like to, and there are good wide receiver options, I would like to replace DJ Moore in my lineup for somebody that has been crushing it through 3 weeks.
Yeah, still a fringe wide receiver 3 for me. I do like the matchup right now. He could see some Byron Murphy shadow, and Murphy's done a decent job. He actually shadowed Cooper Kupp on the perimeter last week, and as mentioned, Kupp did not have a big receiving game. He had that long rushing touchdown. Also, he was on Devontae Adams a couple weeks ago when Adams had a down game, so that makes me a little nervous, but at the end of the day, Arizona has given up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers, so kind of offsetting those 2 things a little bit, and he's still, I mean, the guy has 1,100 plus yards in 3 straight seasons. It's hard to believe
It's not DJ Moore.
that he's not producing at a high level. That hasn't gone great, but I'm giving him another week here as a fringe wide receiver 3. It's a tough one, though.
It's not DJ Moore.
It's a tough one.
I don't think it's him. All right, let's talk about it. It's not him. We
know
it.
that.
Let's talk about Jets and Steelers lineup locks for this game. We got Najee Harris, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in the show. Deontay Johnson for the Steelers. Zach Wilson might be making his debut here in this game. Joe Flacco heading to the bench. That could potentially impact some of these Jets wide receivers, the skill position players, because it's going to be a different offense.
Yeah,
now.
I'm glad you led with that because that's what I'm worried about. Like if I have Garrett Wilson and then, it actually could work better for Elijah Moore. Maybe he gets more target volume. It's going to come down to preferences. And Joe Flacco had a preference for Garrett Wilson, and he obviously threw to Tyler Conklin quite a bit.
Yep.
And
maybe that changes up because remember, Zach Wilson has not played in a regular season game with Garrett Wilson. He's played in quite a few with Elijah Moore, and Moore had some big games last season. I think some of that came with like Mike White and when he missed some time, but still those two have a little bit of chemistry together. So I'm curious to see how that works out. And that's why you might see a little bit of a conservative nature from me with the ranking of some of those guys. Like Tyler Conklin is a fringe tight end one, not a top 5 or 6 guy. And Garrett Wilson maybe a little lower than he would be if Flacco's there, and Moore a little higher. Looking at Eli Moore and DFS as well. So something to consider. Things could change, and they might. The overall offensive volume is going to come down. They've been off the charts with passing and overall offensive plays as well. And maybe they struggle too. Maybe they don't keep as many drives going. We don't know how good Zach Wilson is right now. We just don't know. This could be really bad, or maybe it's really good. Maybe he's even better. Maybe they start, scoring more. So you're exactly right. This is different than a lot of other teams because we're getting a brand new, different young quarterback as opposed to Flacco, who's been there all season long so far.
Kind of feels like we're hitting the reset button on some guys' values that we just started to establish 3 weeks into this season, which is kind of tough. All right, for the Steelers, on the other side of that, not looking at any of the other wide receivers, but Pat Freiermuth, unless you have to, like maybe Chase Claypool if you're in a deeper league, but Pat Freiermuth has become a set it and forget it tight end one with the amount of target share
put him in our lineup
that he is getting here. I think he should be a lineup lock. Any conversation?
I was
there?
on the fence on him. I think I wrote him as a lineup lock, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about it just because he's coming off a down game in prime time.
Right? Remember, it was.
So I wrote about him a little bit in here, but I do think we're still starting him. Weeks 1 and 2, 16 targets and a touchdown. He's a good player.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. One more game here. Let's talk about Browns at Falcons. Lineup blocks in this one for the Cleveland Browns include Nick Chubb. And for the Falcons, I'm assuming it's going to include both Drake London and Kyle Pitts.
Well, we have just Pitts on the sheet. London is a very strong wide receiver too, or flex option for all of us based off of rankings. Yeah, I think in this conversation, I know that we define lineup blocks a little bit stricter than perhaps maybe some would. Nick Chubb, I think you're playing Amari Cooper after back-to-back great weeks in a decent enough matchup, right? I mean, how much of a concern is there surrounding these Atlanta perimeter corners for Amari Cooper?
They haven't played well. 4th most fantasy points to receivers, 6th most to the perimeter. Terrell might shadow Amari Cooper in this game, but again, he's struggling. The guys he shadows have been good so far, so I agree Cooper should be in lineups.
I want to ask a real quick question because one of the things that just makes me nervous about Amari Cooper, I love the fact he is very much the de facto wide receiver one in that offense, and there is not another pass catcher that's going to challenge him there.
Yeah.
But when you have an offense that throws for less than 225 yards, give or take a game, how much value can a wide receiver have like that in a low volume passing offense?
A lot. Amari Cooper sure can because he's getting all the targets. And we've seen less Kareem Hunt in the passing game than we have over the past couple of years. David Njoku got going last week, but it's basically been Amari Cooper +1 over the past 2 weeks. I mean, I could certainly be bitten in the rear by this one, but at this, why would you not play Amari Cooper after back-to-back great weeks? By the way, he's been maligned, and certainly the Cowboys made a decision they probably regret at this point. But he's a really talented player. He's 4th overall pick for a reason. Super talented guy, clear-cut #1 alpha in this offense. And as we discussed after last Thursday night's game, Jacoby Brissett is playing the best football of his career. And I know that's sort of damning with faint praise, but solid football. Maybe he's probably quarterback 18 or 20 on the year right now, and I would have thought he'd be more like quarterback 25 or 28.
Yeah, and Cleveland is top 5 in most offensive efficiency metrics, right? They're playing well offensively. And you might say, well, schedule's been pretty easy. Well, they're playing Atlanta this week, right? So we're not really worried about the opposition. It should be another good game for them. If a guy's seeing double-digit targets, you'd be really hard-pressed to put him on your bench. So, of course, Cooper should be in lineups.
Let's talk about one more player here, and I think it's Cordero Patterson. Running back 6 through 3 weeks. I was out. I'm just going to say this. I was out on both Amari Cooper and Cordero Patterson coming into the season. I think through the first 3 weeks, I regret that now on Amari Cooper, seeing the kind of volume that he's getting. Cordero Patterson, I did not expect to see this either with the drafting of Tyler Algier, with Drake London, and hopefully seeing Kyle Pitts continue to mature in that offense. But he is continuing to get volume here. And when we talk about how bad running backs have been, to have someone that's been running back 6 is fantastic in Cordero Patterson.
Yeah, that's how backwards this season has been, right? Cordero Patterson, who you think is kind of a half receiver, kind of like a pass catching specialist. He's 43rd at running back and catches with 4, but he's 3rd in rushing yards.
Rushing yards, wow.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's just, again, he's like Derrick Henry now. It's just everyone's flip-flopping roles. Everyone forgot what their specialty is this year. So it's incredible.
Great story, yeah.
2 really good games. Had the 1 dud in week 2. So I have him 20th, which is about where we all are. A little bit of risk in there. I mean, if he had 3 weeks like that, he'd be in our top 10. That's where he finished last year. But that 1 week, it makes me a little bit nervous.
Okay. I think that's going to wrap it up for us. We're going to pay some bills, come back with a segment of Squirrel Stock. But first, Mike Clay.
All right. Football season brings back many traditions we know and love. Touchdown dances, the thick 6, game winnings, the thick 6.
Yeah, the thick 6. We're big defensive guys.
Oh, okay.
Thick
All right.
6.
You jumped in there. I was I thought maybe I misread it or
No,
something.
you did
But
it
anyway,
right.
there's also game-winning field goals, comebacks in your fantasy league that you didn't think were possible. And watching it all with friends and a cooler full of Miller Lite. Every Sunday, game time is Miller time, or Monday, or Thursday. It's never not Miller time. No. The answer is no. With 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12-ounce serving, your only concern is keeping your RB1 on the field or getting your tight end in the end zone. A Miller Lite tastes like beer. Because if you're a beer lover, you don't want watered-down flavor. You want the original light beer. No matter how your team plays, it's the beer that's always a winner. And what more could you ask for? Football season brings back the big hits, so reach for the biggest hit of them all, Miller Lite. You can find Miller Lite pretty much everywhere beer is sold, or go to MillerLite.com/FFF for delivery options near you. It's Miller time.
Football season is here, and nothing beats seeing your favorite team live. Not only does Vivid Seats have great NFL ticket prices, they're also the official ticketing partner of ESPN. And with Vivid Seats rewards, when you buy 10 tickets, you get the 11th one free. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats. Life happens live. Receive a reward credit equal to the average price of the 10 tickets purchased, excluding taxes, fees, and processing costs. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. All right, Squirrel Stock for week 4. Everybody has been waiting for this point in the show where I can give my Squirrel Stock players. And here we are. I talked about this guy yesterday, Gabe Davis. In case you did not listen yesterday, Gabe Davis is going to be Squirrel Stock up for me.
Okay.
There are a couple of major reasons. One, the Baltimore Ravens allow a league-high 168 wide receiver fantasy points so far this year. 2, they got embarrassed last week against the Miami Dolphins, in which they ran 90 offensive plays, and they only scored 17 points. Gabe Davis has been down. Obviously, the first couple of weeks, he got bailed out. Honestly, he got bailed out by a touchdown
Correct.
week 1 for you. Didn't play week 2. He looked fine in week 3, but nothing special. This week is a week where stock up for Gabe Davis. You drafted him to be a starter in your fantasy lineup. You're finally going to get that here this week. Field Yates, and you buying Squirrel Stock on Gabe Davis for week 4.
I am largely buying it with a little bit of reservation. Not going to lie to you. The target share for Gabe Davis through 2 games, small sample size, it's concerning, but it was small last year when he was a talented guy as well. So I would like to see not only Gabe Davis playing a ton like he has and being healthy like I presume he is, but also just getting more involved. I would like to see more target share for Gabe Davis because that unlocks the possibility of him being a top 20 wideout this year.
Yes, it does. All right. Another player that I have here this week, DK Metcalf, Mike Clay, is stock down for me. And I know you may be saying, how is it stock down? We already had lowered expectations for DK Metcalf coming into the season, right? His ADOT is down over 30% over the last 3 seasons of his career. His average depth of target. He's not being targeted deep like he was with Russell Wilson. At the same time, Seattle ranks 30th in offensive plays. They are not getting a ton of plays out there for him to be able to be out there and making fantasy points for your fantasy roster. And this week, he gets Jeff Okudah. And I realize that if you're not a fan of the Detroit Lions, that might not sound like a big deal. Jeff Okudah has done a really good job each of the last 2 weeks against both Terry McLaurin and Justin Jefferson. And not only does he get Jeff Okudah this week, he gets Marshawn Lattimore next week. And I expect a shadow from him based on everything that I've read, based on previous wide receiver cornerback matchups, Mike. So are you buying Squirrel Stock? DK Metcalf in the short term, stock down for DK.
Well, this is how I know you're sharp, because he's coming off a good game and you have stock down. So you're one step ahead of the game. So very smart, knowing that tough matchups are coming up. So I don't have much more to add. We talked about the Okudah matchup earlier in the show. It's going to be a tough one for him for sure. And I have some concerns with that based on how your boy's playing over the past couple of weeks. So I agree. Not feeling super confident about Metcalf right now.
All right, let's do another couple ones. I'll tell you what. Let's do Najee Harris next. Najee Harris, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
He's stocked down for me. Maybe not this week.
Okay.
But in the long term, the next couple of weeks. This week, he obviously gets the New York Jets. I think that's okay. That's a nice matchup here. But then he faces the Buffalo Bills, who have allowed the second fewest yards per carry in the NFL so far, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of 3 defenses to not allow a rushing touchdown so far this season. This offense desperately needs more explosiveness, and it's not happening with Mitch Trubisky under center. I think that Najee might have a nice week this week, but then the next 2 weeks following that are going to be really tough sledding for a team that's going to need to utilize him. So stock down for me on Najee Harris over the next 2 weeks.
All right, so I understand what you're saying, and I think I buy the concept of his stock being down, but I can't really buy this entirely for one simple reason. There's like 3 running backs that matter in fantasy right now.
Right?
Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, James Robinson. Everybody else has some sort of red flag so far this season. So, like, you can't move off of Najee Harris because there's not a player that you could trade him for who's trending in the right direction. Meanwhile, Najee might be trending in the wrong direction. It's just a wasteland of running backs right now. They're becoming tight ends. It's like 3 guys that matter, and the rest of them are just observers. So, your logic is sound. I just don't know what you can do.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't know what you can do.
It's stock down. What you can do is expectations over the next 2 weeks.
What you can do is when he has like 8 points in week 5, you can say, that's Squirrel. He's a smart one. He knew exactly what he was talking about.
A couple weeks ago. All right, we're going to do one more here, and it is largely the same. We're going to find out if you guys agree with me. I'm talking LA Rams running backs. They are both stock down for me.
Ooh.
You may say, wait a minute. Cam Akers is trending in the right direction usage-wise. He started to get more run.
Yeah.
Here we go. Not only is it a timeshare between those 2 guys, here's the upcoming schedule. At the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, that's tough.
At the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
At the Carolina Panthers. That's a cake one.
I think the Cowboys and Panthers are both at home, but whatever.
Yeah, big difference.
There is a big difference. Then they have a bye.
Okay, I don't predict to go off that week.
And then they take on San Francisco and Tampa Bay again, back-to-back. 4 of the next 5 teams that they play are top 10 against fantasy running backs. And then they also have a bye in there where you're not going to be able to utilize them. So this is going to be a really tough sled for the next little bit for both Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. They are stocked down for me, not only because of that timeshare, Mike Clay, but because this schedule is tough coming up outside of that Carolina Panthers game.
I agree. We've seen a 2-man split so far. Yeah. They have not been productive. I do like the way Akers is going in terms of volume, but you're going to need 18 to 20 carries because he's not involved in the passing game as well. So there are concerns. And don't forget, after week 4, right? Kyron Williams is eligible to return after week 5.
It's a little bit later. I would expect it to be more like a 6 to 8 week injury, which suffered in week 1. Yes. Yeah. So he could return at some point during this span. Yeah. It may be at the back end of it, but Mike is correct that all of a sudden a player that they wanted to have be a thing. We talked about it with Schefter in week 1. Could be back in the fold. So this is a fair one. It brings a tear to my eye, but it's a fair one.
I agree. I hope we're wrong and Cam Akers crushes it because I have him on a few teams, as you can imagine, but we'll see.
I have a lot of these. I have Najee on quite a few teams, so I also need him not to do poorly the next couple weeks. All right, that's going to do it for us today. If you stick around within the feed, you're going to have the CSS DFS podcast coming next.
Why would you not stick around for that?
I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't, Field. I would if I were everyone else. But we will be back tomorrow, and by we, I mean Field, Mike, and Stefania breaking down everything you need for the Friday show, all the injury updates. We love you guys. We'll see you then.
Do we think the Pistons are winning 73 or 75 games this year?
Is that a pickleball team?
Yes, Mike, showing your cards right now.
Oh.
Stop it.
Not familiar.
Hey, did they get the trust the process thing from you, or did you get the trust the process thing for them?
That was probably me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Process over results.
Exactly. That's where I
Regression
thought
to the
Joel
mean.
Embiid, yes.
All that stuff.
Tomorrow on